On the night of December 30th, 2000, someone entered a family home in Setagaya, Tokyo, and murdered an entire family of 4. But what makes this case so disturbing was what happened after the murders, because the killer didn't leave. He stayed inside the house for hours. To understand how a crime this brutal could happen, you have to understand where this family lived and how vulnerable that house had become. At the end of the year 2000, the Miyazawa family lived in Kamisoshigaya, a quiet part of Setagaya, Tokyo. Their home stood beside Soshigaya Park, in an area that had changed dramatically over the years. More than 200 families had once lived there, but by the end of 2000, only 4 households remained. A planned expansion of the park had forced many people out, leaving the Miyazawa home in a strangely exposed position, with open parkland directly behind it and far fewer neighbours than there used to be. Inside the house lived the 44-year-old Mikio Miyazawa, his 41-year-old wife Yasuko, and their 2 children, 8-year-old Nina and 6-year-old Rei. Yasuko's mother Haruko lived right next door, which meant the 2 homes were part of each other's daily routine. In the days before the murders, a few details began to stand out. Yasuko had reportedly mentioned a strange car parked outside the house on more than one occasion. On December 27th, one witness claimed to have seen a man, believed to be in his 40s, walking around the property. And about a week before the killings, Mikio reportedly confronted noisy teenagers at the skate park behind the house. On December 30th, the night of the murders, the Miyazawas spent part of the evening out shopping. Around 7 p.m, Yasuko stopped by her mother's house next door. Nina spent part of the evening there too, watching a recorded TV programme with family members until around 9:30, before eventually heading back home. By late that evening, Mikio, Yasuko, Nina and Rei were all back inside the house. Around 10 p.m, someone walking along the path behind the house reportedly heard what sounded like an argument coming from inside. That account has never been fully confirmed, but it sits uncomfortably close to what happened next. At 10:38, there was one final confirmed sign of normal life. A password-protected work email was opened on the family computer, believed to have been read by Mikio. Outside, someone may have already been watching. The most likely theory is that the killer approached from the rear of the property, through Sashigaya Park, using darkness for cover. It's believed that the intruder climbed up to the second-floor bathroom window. The fly screen was found on the ground below, and footprints were found in the mud beneath the windows. If that's what happened, the killer would have entered upstairs, close to the bedrooms. 6-year-old Rei is believed to have been the first victim. He was likely asleep in his bed when the killer entered quietly and strangled him with bare hands. Around that same time, Yasuko's family next door heard what sounded like a loud thud and banging coming from the Miyazawa home. Mikio may have heard movement upstairs and gone to investigate. Moments later, the confrontation turned violent. Mikio was stabbed in the head with a sashimi knife. The force was so severe that part of the blade snapped off and remained lodged inside his head. It's one of the most disturbing details in the entire case, but the attack did not stop there. After killing Mikio, the intruder turned on Yasuko and Nina, and at first, investigators believed the attacker continued using the broken knife. Then, the attack stopped. The killer walked to the kitchen, where he took a second weapon, a Suntoku knife. He then returned to Yasuko and Nina and stabbed them to death. Investigators later described the violence as especially excessive. Some reports stated both suffered repeated wounds to the face and neck. Within an hour, the entire Miyazawa family was dead. But what happened next is what turned this case from a brutal family murder into one of Japan's most baffling unsolved crimes. At 1:18 a.m, the family computer connected to the internet. It remained active until 1:23. That single timestamp confirms one chilling fact. The killer was still inside the house. Investigators believe he remained there for hours, somewhere between 2 and 10 after the attack. And those next few hours, he appears to have moved through the home with almost no urgency at all. He walked into the kitchen and ate food, including ice cream and melon, and drank barley tea. At some point, he used the toilet and did not flush. The killer is also believed to have treated his own injuries using first aid supplies and sanitary products from inside the house, suggesting he may have been hurt during the attack, maybe in a struggle with Mikio. He appears to have moved from room to room. Drawers were opened, papers were disturbed, some were dumped in the bath and toilet. The house was ransacked, at least in part, though not in a way that clearly suggested simple theft. Some money was taken, but more was left behind. And everywhere he went, he left pieces of himself behind. Blood believed to be his own, fingerprints, shoe impressions, DNA. He even left clothing behind: a jacket, a hat, gloves, a scarf, handkerchiefs, a hip bag, even the murder weapons. Some have speculated he may have changed clothes inside the house, possibly after being covered in blood during the attack. In many murder cases, investigators are forced to work from fragments. Here, it was the opposite. The killer stayed long enough to leave the house full of evidence. There have also been claims over the years that he may even have slept or napped on the sofa, though that has never been verified. By the next morning, Haruko had not heard from the family. After being unable to reach her daughter, she became concerned and went next door to check on them. She rang the doorbell and there was no answer. When Haruko went inside, she found the bodies of Mikio, Yusuko, Nina and Rei. But by then, the killer was gone, and the scene left behind was unlike almost anything investigators had seen. A relative reportedly called police at 10:56 a.m, and from that moment, investigators began processing one of the most evidence-rich murder scenes in modern Japan. One of the most baffling clues was the clothing left behind. Reporters said the suspect's shirt came from a very limited production run, with only around 130 made and sold. On paper, that sounds like the kind of detail that should have narrowed the case quickly, but investigators reportedly traced only a small number of the buyers. Even a clue that specific failed to produce a name. The shoes were another major lead. The prints reportedly came from Slazenger shoes made in South Korea, and some reports said that matching size was not sold in Japan. Several other items left behind were also linked to Korea. That pushed investigators towards international leads and years of speculation about whether the killer had some connection outside Japan. Then there was the DNA. Investigators confirmed the killer was male. Testing reportedly pointed towards East Asian paternal ancestry, while other analysis suggested maternal ancestry from South Europe, the Adriatic regions, or possibly the Caucasus. But even that became complicated. Some later reports suggested the European ancestry may have been more distant, rather than coming from a parent. The DNA fascinated the public, but it never gave police a name. There were stranger clues too. Trace material found in the killer's hip bag was reportedly linked to a desert terrain in the American Southwest, possibly near Edwards Air Force Base in California. Another source suggested the sand may have come from a Japanese skate park. That was the pattern of this case. Every clue seemed important, and almost every clue pointed somewhere different. Police never stopped investigating. In 2001, investigators launched Operation Roller, going door to door, collecting fingerprints and eliminating suspects. In 2021, new technology reportedly helped identify a man who had bought a knife matching the type used in the murders, but his DNA did not match, and he was ruled out. Police considered robbery as one possible motive. Some money was reportedly taken from the house, but more money was also left behind, including cash and foreign currency. The violence was so extreme that a simple theft never seemed to explain the whole scene. A grudge was another theory. That idea was strengthened by the intensity of the attacks, especially against Yasuko and Nina, and by reports that Mikio had recently confronted noisy youths near the skate park behind the house, but no suspect ever emerged. Even the killer's age changed over time. At first, police believed the suspect may have been anywhere from 15 to 40 years old. In 2018, that estimate was reportedly revised downward. Later reports pushed it back up again. Even the profile itself became unstable. Another part of the mystery is how the killer got inside. If the killer did enter through the upstairs bathroom, it suggests a stealth intrusion by someone bold, athletic, and possibly unfamiliar to the family. But even that theory does have weak points. Some later doubts about the condition of the suspect's jacket and bag made the crime seem less certain. The reported pattern of blood footprints inside the house has also been used to argue that the movement inside may not fit that route as neatly as people assume. Some have suggested the killer may have entered another way, possibly through the front door, which could imply someone known to the family. But there are problems with that idea too. The front door was reportedly locked, and the physical evidence at the bathroom window still strongly pointed investigators in that direction, and no confirmed suspect with a known grievance has ever emerged from the family's life. There were even theories about multiple killers, partly because of reports that a taxi driver picked up 3 men near the area that night, with one of them apparently bleeding. But police never publicly confirmed it, and investigators continued to treat the crime as the work of one person. There was also the theory that the killer may have been foreign or of mixed ancestry. That idea came mostly from the forensic evidence, the DNA findings, the South Korean-made shoes, and the international leads police pursued over the years. It may well describe something true about the killer's background, but a profile is not a name, and in this case, it never became one. There is one final detail people still talk about. Around 100 days after the murders, a small Buddhist statue was found near the Setagaya River, less than a mile from the Miyazawa home. The statue was a Buddhist figure believed to protect the souls of children in the afterlife. Because Mikio and Yasuko had been killed alongside their 2 children, some believed it may have been left there as a sign of guilt, grief, or remorse. Police examined it as possible evidence, but no connection was ever proven. And after all these years, the central mystery remains. A killer entered a house in Setagaya on the night before New Year's Eve and murdered an entire family in a matter of minutes. Then he stayed behind for hours, moving through the house as if it was his own, leaving behind enough evidence that in almost any other case would have led to an arrest. Investigators had fingerprints, blood, DNA, clothing, weapons, and years of forensic work. But they never got the one thing that mattered most: his identity. Mikio Miyazawa was 44. Yusuko Miyazawa was 41. Nina was 8. And Ray was 6.